Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangam Sharanam Gacchami. I go to seek refuge in the Buddha. I seek refuge in the Dharma. I seek refuge in the Sangha. These are what is known as the three gems in Buddhism. Most of us are acquainted with the young prince Siddhartha. From his safe haven in his palace, ventured out into the city of Kapilavastu. And what did he encounter? Old age, sickness, and death. And something in him snapped. What it snapped? His illusions about life. And so the rest of his life was a search, not only for himself, but for humanity, how to overcome these life itself and get into something called a higher life. Well, it's a dramatic, you can say, depiction of how he was converted from an ordinary prince to a sage. But it may not have been also there, who knows? Girish Chandra Ghosh adapted a song from Edwin Arnold's Light of Asia. And he took it from the Buddha Charita, one of the earliest biographies of the Buddha, where they say, and some angels, celestials, angels, they sang a song to rouse in him his mission, of what he was to do in life. And that made him kind of begin his actually quest. So the song is beautiful. It is also mentioned in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. And it goes thus: we mourn for rest, alas, but rest can never find. We know not whence we come, nor where we float away. Time and again we tread this round of smiles and tears. In vain we pine to know whether our pathway leads and why we play this empty play. We sleep, though awake, as if by a spell bewitched. Will darkness never break into the light of dawn? As restless as the wind, life moves unceasingly. We know not who we are, nor whence it is we come. We know not why we come, nor where is it we drift. Sharp woes dart forth on every side. This is just the two stanzas, it's a very long. And there was a singer called Ram Taran who sang this song. And Sri Ramakrishna heard it, of course. And so this was a some of the lines, as they say, that made Buddha begin his quest. Everyone has a mission in life. It depends on who finds it earlier or later. We forget, and then somebody has to come and remind us. So he saw, as is dramatized, his father had kept him in a lap of luxury. And so he had ventured out, and they say he ventured out 4 times. Well, that also could be a dramatization. So first he encountered an old person, and then a sick person, a dying person, and a dead person. And the 4th, he encountered a mendicant who's sitting and meditating. So these were the 4, you can say, for it. In trying to understand the causes of this old age, sickness and death, suffering in general, what he did was, that was one of the, you can say, his hallmarks. He did not bring in an external agency. Like when you want to explain a thing, you have to explain it to the nature of the thing itself. If you want to understand what's a tree, then you got to understand its origins from the seed, from its very nature. You don't say God created a tree. That's a very unscientific way of going about things. So he sought answers in the problems themselves. And he brought out this doctrine of impermanence and constant change. This is, it's apparent, to many, of course. Everything. And he brought out the sequence of these changes. Possibly, it may not occur in that very sequence. There are pros and cons for this argument, but then we see the results. Yeah, there is change, and there are these constant feelings of impermanence and just appearance. So this was, we'll go into his philosophy a little later, but his life is it's beautiful. He was born 256 before Common Era. Way back. And at that time, you can imagine that these questions had been in the philosophical kind of air of India, because it was the late Vedic period. In fact, the Vedic period had kind of become over, and this was a time when it's called the aphorism period, the sutra period, as they say. Sri Ramakrishna, he is teaching Swami Abhedananda. Swami Abhedananda now he was studying Buddhism like mad, and so he's saying, see, I want to go beyond the state of even bliss. So Brahmananda Raja Maharaj is saying now he's studying Buddhism, that's why he's now talking about a state even beyond bliss. And then Sri Ramakrishna says, and he's saying, Buddha is an incarnation of God. How can you compare him with anyone else? As he is great, so too his teachings. So here we have, he was an incarnation of God and he was great. Abhedananda was trying to equate him with everyone else. That is, he was just like, and he himself said, I am a man amongst men. I'm not anything special. But here Shri Ramakrishna says he was something special. So his life was, his father was Shuddhodana, one whose food is pure. And his mother was Mahamaya, the great Maya. It is not that metaphysical Maya, but Maya. And his mother had a dream one time of a white elephant entering into her. Now, this is supposed to be very auspicious. And they had bought all the soothsayers and all the sages and all. What does it mean? They wanted to interpret the dream. Saying, yeah, the child that's going to be born is either going to be a great emperor or an awakened one. There, his father's hopes were dashed. So he was a king, his father, it's like a chieftain of one of those states on the northern fringes of Vedic India. There were 16 republics. They were republics, and the chieftains and kings were democratically elected. So we had democracy even before anybody else. So he was probably elected, and then all these 16 guys, the republics were constantly quarreling amongst each other. But we'll come down to that later. So it was a custom that the woman goes to her mother's house to deliver her child. And she herself was a princess, and she was going to another republic that is on the boundaries of Kapilavastu. And on the way, she felt the pangs of birth, and then she delivered a child in what is called Lumbini. Those things. Okay. So all these small kingdoms were ruled by the council of elders, etc. And so they brought the child back, and the sages were delighted. Especially one old sage comes and is saying, I was waiting to behold this child who will be the light of the world. And so he was brought up in luxury. But as those astrologers had said, if he encounters suffering, it's over for him. It's over for you also. So the father kept him in kind of, as I say, he was living in an opulent lifestyle. But a child is born of this stature does not behave like an ordinary human. Because when he was, I think, 3 or 4 years old, he was found to be meditating under a rose apple tree. And the shade of that rose apple tree did not move, so that the boy was meditating in its shade all through. So he was absorbed. It was during sowing season, where the kings or the chieftains themselves had to first plow the field and sow the seeds. That encouraged kind of the farmers and everything. So there's the festival, and he was found, they were looking out for the boy. Where's the child gone? And he was meditating. And he was oblivious of everything. So that was his absorption from the very beginning. He grew up, and he was born in a Kshatriya family, that is the kingly class. This is royal. So he was trained in military tactics and all the weapons and in administration and all these. So it was complete, and he was also trained in music and everything else, like in the old days. So he married at 16 a princess called Yashodhara. So, and she was also not an ordinary. She used to go around in the city without anyone spotting her, and she used to go and help the poor and the homeless. Yeah, she was very noble. She understood Buddha, at times his kind of restlessness, in order to kind of break free. So he was there, and so a son was born to them, and he was called Rahul. Rahul, so Buddha himself says, now there's a fetter that has come. Rahul means fetter. Yeah, fetter. So as I said, he's looking out for a kind of a way to express himself and express what his feelings are. And then he ventures out, he sees these things, and he presses his father, I'll leave now. There is no point in waiting. And no parents are very reluctant. When he was young, he was brought up by his aunt, Mahaprajapati. She was, as you know, she was his mother's sister. She also was a very noble woman. So the sources of Buddha's life are spread out all over in the literature, especially in the three baskets, like the Sutra Pitaka, the Vinaya Pitaka, and Abhidharma Pitaka. They are a mass of collections of writings on his teachings, on the rules for monastics, and the philosophy. So one of the earliest biographies was, as we had mentioned, Buddha Charitra of Ashwagosha. So that was in the 2nd century before Common Era. As he was, say, when he left his palace, and one last look at his sleeping wife and her son. She wasn't sleeping, she was awake, they say. And she had kept some robes ready for him, traveler's robes. He puts them on and leaves. As he leaves the capital, he cuts off his long hair, and it tells the charioteer who had taken him to that spot, go back and leave me alone. So he then begins his search for teachers, and he meets many teachers. Mainly he had studied Sankhya philosophy. He studied the Sankhya and the Yoga, etc. He meets 5 ascetics, and they believe so much in this, they used to mortify themselves. And Buddha joined them, and he was also mortifying himself. And to the extent where his food was reduced to 1 grain of rice. They say 1 pea a day. The extreme mortification. That is also a path, because the Yoga Sutras, they say tapa, svadhyaya. So there is that, you can go through that also. But then he felt that his physical, mental weaknesses were not letting him search or meditate. So when he used to go around to those various teachers, he learned the philosophy, he learned meditation, and as we know that he was already in a way an adept at meditation. He saw that they are not giving me solutions to these problems of old age and sickness and death. And his teachers themselves had not escaped the jaws of these 3 beasts. So he struck out on his own. And That's the time when he meets his 5 ascetics and goes there. One day he was trying to meditate and he, for obvious reasons, he swooned and lost consciousness. And then he was roused up by a girl who was passing by. She was going to offer some rice porridge to those deities, and she's seen a monk, old monk, lying down there. So she offered that rice porridge to him. He ate it, he was fortified, and then he meditated. He went down to the tree and meditated. And with those great words, I will not move from the seat. Let my body and skin and etc. wither away, till I reach enlightenment, which is difficult in millions of cycles of creation. So it's like ihasane shushatu me sharira. So he took that resolve, and he sat down and he meditated, and then finally he got the answers to it. Now, it's not that sickness, old age and disease has left humanity. It's still there. So what did he strive for to solve? It's not solved actually. Yeah, it is solved for you. You can get out of it. You won't be affected by it. The laws of nature will not let anyone stop anybody from becoming sick or old or dying. These things are, they're unbreakable. So what did Buddha do? Buddha did, as I say, he expressed the idea that you can escape this entire chain of events through what is called nirvana. You extinguish yourself. That is it. So he was, there's the 4 noble truths. Now you see, when he started teaching, after he attained nirvana, that's important. Otherwise, people say they will keep on teaching here and there on hundreds of things. They themselves have not got anything, and they will keep on quoting from here and there. But he started preaching only after he realized that state. Now he's saying the bliss that was so great within him, he sat down and he was in the vicinity for 7 weeks. Some say it was 7 days. When I was there in the places, they showed me the places. They've sculpted these lotuses on the ground to show that he paced up and down. The bliss inside was so tremendous. He never had to eat or sleep or do anything. He was in that state of intoxication, of bliss, pacing up and down. So before he could get that enlightenment, it needed some effort. So we had, the last temptation. We have the last temptation. So we had Mara who came. Because Buddha was seeking to end desire and ignorance. And how can that be? Mara is the embodiment of ignorance and desire. So he came, and he tested him with wind and rain and rocks and weapons and coals, burning ashes, etc., etc. That's a very long dramatization, that he had his daughters come in the form of rain and wind and you can say water and space, etc. And with their best forms, and they came and he saw the entire world engulfed in flames, and the flames came right up to where he was sitting. But his clear insight showed the illusory nature of that. And he banished it. So with water, the whole world, as it were, flooded, and the water reached up to his, you can say, seat. Yet he was seeing through all these, as you say, mirages. Then Mara came saying, you are occupying a place that belongs to me. Saying, no. So, because in this world, you will have a place as long as you have a desire. When you don't have a desire, you will not need this earth. You will not need this body. So you are occupying a place that belongs to me. And as you know, it's dramatized as Buddha opens his eyes and in front of him, sitting in front, sees a mirror image of himself. And he looks at him. So he's saying, Buddha says, I have finally met you. You are the creator of this illusion. And the illusion says, you dwell in me. And it is I who have created you. And then he says, and then he sees that it is his own projection of his own ego that has appeared like this, as this delusive second Buddha. He's saying, no more will I let you build up another illusion. I'll break the ridgepole which holds you up. And then Buddha, they say, touches the earth in bringing a witness to his great deeds. And then the earth trembled. And Mara knew that he had lost. With a cry, he vanishes. Then Buddha gets his enlightenment. Yes, that this story has been told and retold in the Yoga Sutras. We also find that before the yogi reaches these higher realms of yoga, nature brings out its best forms, the very best forms, the very subtle. These are the things that you will never encounter through these ordinary senses. And then if the yogi is not allured by these sights and sounds and taste and touches, nature then, as they say, pops away and the yogi is then free. So this is actually what happened, and they've put it in a form that people can understand, not in yogic language, but in nice mythology. So it is these various elements, earth, water, fire, air, and space that appear in all their various forms. So some say that he sent his three beautiful daughters, Mara, lust and thirst and discontent. And he also pushes them away. Okay. I remember being in that vicinity, and it's so calm and quiet and amazing. The descendant of that tree which Buddha sat has been kind of, it's there enough. Grafted is saved. And now, after this, then he said there are four noble truths. Chatvari Arya Satyani, the four truths of the Aryans. There is pain. Yes, there is a cause for pain. There's a rise of pain. There's a cause for pain, and there is a part to the end of pain. Okay, dukkha. It's called dukkha. What happens? Kind of emphasize this kind of negative idea of life as suffering and suffering and suffering and suffering. And so that's why there's a charge leveled against Indian philosophy. These people always talk about suffering, suffering, suffering. See, so much enjoyment is there. Yeah. But you don't see the suffering in the enjoyment. So Buddha saw that. So you use the word dukkha. Dukkha. And he was very careful with his words. Yeah. So when he used the word dukkha, it means dukkha, it's pain. Not anything else. Not it's suffering. He was mainly a teacher for the masses. And he used not the Sanskrit language to convey his teachings, but just ordinary language. It was most probably Magadhi, the mixture of Pali, which is language, but it's kind of dying out, Pali. So there is another dramatization where they say the gods also came and said, hey, now that you have reached this state, go out and teach the world. Then he looked around the whole universe and he said, I don't see anybody who's fit enough to receive this message. So the gods say, hey, water it down a little. And then he did. And then he said, still nobody, water it down a little more. And then goes out and preaches. So he meets that 5 ascetics of his old friends, and they say, "There, don't talk to him because he has fallen from the path of asceticism." So, but when they see him, there's something different about this Gautama. So what's that? So then they heard him, and they were the first ones to receive. This happened at a deer park, what is called Sarnath. Very strange, you know. Holy Mother, just to bring it, I just remembered. Holy Mother had also gone to Sarnath to see this. It's a place of pilgrimage. So there were these British officers and all these people. They had come, oh, look at that. They were looking goggle-eyed at all that spectacle. And then Holy Mother also had gone. She looked at them and saying, see, look at these people. In their previous incarnation, they had built it, and now they are coming and admiring their old work. So he first set in motion the wheel of dharma at Sarnath by his first teachings. So what was he teaching? He was teaching the path. But he was very careful. There are these 10 questions which have not to be asked and cannot be answered. And they are, is the world eternal? Is it non-eternal? Is it finite? Is the world infinite? Is the soul the same as the body? Is it different from the body? Does one who knows the truth, Tathagata, live again after death? Does the Tathagata not live again after death? Does he both live and not live again after death? Does he neither live nor not live again after death? A little play of words also. But when he used to be asked these questions, everybody kept quiet. He kept quiet about it. And his personality was so great, and everybody became silent in front of him. When he was beginning his work of preaching, he met, even before he attended enlightenment, he met a king called Bimbisara. He was the king of that one of the republics called Magadha. So he knew that he was of a royal lineage. He's saying, come along with me, I'll give you half my kingdom. So he said, no, I'll go and get my enlightenment first. And then Bimbisara, the king, became one of his very loyal, you can say, followers and patrons. Today, what is Magadha is what is called Bihar, the Indian state of Bihar, which is a name for a Buddhist monastery, Bihar. So Bihar, they were all dotted all. And since these 16 republics were on this clustered around these northern parts of India, and there were many teachers, itinerant teachers, and there was a lot of scope for studies of various religious systems. This place was a hotbed of philosophy and religion and various teachers and practices. It was here that Buddha started teaching. And he gained a lot of followers. He was, as I said, he was more interested in reaching his message to the common masses. So he had called these 10 questions unprofitable. He said they are not profitable. What profits is renunciation, absence of passion, cessation, quiescence, knowledge, supreme wisdom, and nirvana. So these are the indeterminate questions. But you know what happens is, the philosophers who came after Buddha, they were trying to answer these very 10 questions. Why? They were told not to, but then they were challenged by other schools of philosophies. Hey, you don't even have anything to show what is a soul and what is not a soul. If there is no soul, what is there to show? So Sri Ramakrishna says, in fact, Swami Vivekananda says, Buddha could not express in words what he had realized by his tapasya. So people say he was an atheist. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, why atheist? He was not an atheist. He simply could not express his inner experiences in words. Do you know what Buddha means? It is to become one with Bodha, that is pure intelligence. That is the meaning of Buddha. By meditating on that, which is of the nature of pure intelligence, it is to become pure intelligence. So it is to become one with that consciousness. That is. So Buddha, is an enlightened, awakened intellect. It comes from the word buddhi, Buddha. Buddhi is intelligence. So Sri Ramakrishna says the Bodha. Then he says, in another place he's saying, he is not an atheist. Sri Ramakrishna says, when one realizes one's swarupa, one's nature, then he's saying, one attains a state which is beyond is and is not. Sri Ramakrishna uses the word asti and nasti. So he's saying, you cannot say that it is existence or it is not non-existence. Then he says, this existence and non-existence are attributes of Prakriti, nature. Reality is beyond both these attributes of existence and non-existence. So this is Sri Ramakrishna's take on Buddha and Buddhism. Okay. So after his, now they say Buddha attained 3 nirvanas. 2 and the third one is yet to be. First is when he attained it under that bo tree, which is now called a Bodhi tree, Bodhi Vriksha. The second one was when he gave up his body. He lived and preached till he was 80. And he went around with this perfect, you can say, vows, holding on to his vows. They say he went back to his father and his, you can say, kingdom. And his wife was there. And she sends Rahul, who had grown up, go and ask your father your inheritance. So, and then, what will that, there's no, he was a king and then this boy is a prince and he has to get his inheritance. What is the inheritance? Yeah, monasticism. He gave him. Take this, my his foster mother had sent the boy because his wife had died. So his wife, Yashoda, and Yashoda also became one of the first nuns. So he didn't want to start a monastic order for women, but he was prevailed upon by it. And some of the earliest nuns which were there, remarkable. You read their lives, so inspiring lives. So this was these two great streams. It was he who started the first monastic orders for women. Men, it was already ancient there. And so his death also was great. So he was lying on the right side. And when somebody used to come to him, he used to raise himself, place his head on his hands, elbow, and then teach. And then flowers bloomed out of seasons, and the flowers were being shed on him, and hundreds of monks and nuns had come, people had come, and he gave up his body. So that was his parinirvana. That is the second nirvana. Then after he was, they say, cremated, and all his relics were taken, scattered all over the world. Not scattered, taken to all the corners of India. And there were these stupas, that were these, you can see, temple-like structures that were built. So there will come a time when that also will disappear. That will be the third nirvana. But for all practical purposes, he lived till he was 80. He lived and preached. And most of his, you can say, rules for monastics are still followed. Because, like, take for instance, this is called a Chaturmasya. During the rainy season, there should be no itinerant monks or nuns. Because of various things. Water is bad, you'll have snakes coming out of their holes and all say. So 4 months they are supposed to sit down in one place and meditate and study. This, after he passed away, they say that there were over 30 schools, each vying for kind of position. Now, there were these first Buddhist, after he passed away, we had the first Buddhist council, then the second and the third, where the doctrine was kind of put in order by the first disciples. They had tremendous memories. Even today, one of the disciplines of studying Buddhistic scriptures is to memorize the entire Buddhistic 3 baskets called scriptures. This was the golden age of Indian philosophy, and the Buddhists were pitted with the non-Buddhists. And both were honing their skills, in dialectic skills. And so this was a time when, Buddhism spread all over Asia. Not only Asia, from Alexandria right up to Japan. Not even Alexandria, there were traces of Buddhistic influences even in what is called Anatolia, modern day Turkey. So it spread. And how did they spread? Just with their moral force and their philosophical arguments. There was nothing else beside this. So this was the first missionary religion, and this changed the entire culture of Asia. Oh yes. And because there was one school which was called the Yogacharas, that is, let's put it, they were yoga practitioners. Yoga became foundational in all its philosophies and its practices. You can see it here. You will never find, you can find few images of the Buddha standing and all, at Sarnath and all. But it's always sitting down in meditative pose. This shows also that the future of humanity will be this. This will be this icon of humanity, a deeply meditative person. You think there will be any other kind of, because any other kind of activity, any kind of model of future humanity will be only suffering. Yes. What will future humanity look like? This. That's what it will be. Calm, sedate, meditative. Not with those big muscles and with the big guns and shooting and killing and what is this? Human civilization seems like they are still kind of mature, playing with toys. They have not risen up to those heights of where these people could explore and tease out and bring out all these great doctrines. So yoga became foundational, and yoga spread all over the world. Even in the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, that's the aphorism on yoga, you will find traces of Buddhistic influence there in certain aphorisms, because he was a compiler also of the yoga philosophy, Patanjali, that is. Okay. Now, in India, the mythology was rich, and we had the Mahabharata, and then the Ramayana, and then we had all these various Puranas, 18 great Puranas, and the 18 sub-Puranas, and there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of mythological literature. Now, to base your religion on philosophic foundations, that is one first step. Second is, you have to base your religion on mythology also. Yes, this is always, because there's a part of your mind that can understand truth through mythology, through stories. And now it has been found, like, when we read about Joseph Campbell and all these, how they have studied the mythology. Myth-making is a part of human mind and culture. You cannot avoid it. You will bring out stories. After that event is over, you will bring out 100 stories. So they brought out their own stories. And that became, as you call, the past lives of the Buddhas. 500 past lives. Yes. So they say he remembered all of them, and he used to tell, and then the stories were written, and stories grew and grew and grew. They are called the Jataka tales. Social changes? Oh, plenty. Because he had compassion for the poor, and he used to go out to help the poor, there were great social changes that were taking place. And this has always been found. We want changes, social changes. In the ancient cultures, it was always preceded by a spiritual upheaval. Every time. The first changes are spiritual changes. and it is always moved by the sages or incarnations. Otherwise, your social changes you want to do will be superficial, it will just fizzle out. So it is these great, you can say, people of light that they come and they generate these changes, and that is felt in all other areas of society. So here we had people building rest houses, and then for the first vet hospitals were kind of built during that time. So they was taking care of the animals and the environment and people and this. There was a huge social rising up, because they say that after the great Ganga migration, that is, people had migrated from the northwest, that is from the ancient Indus River, which has got its name, India has got its name from Sindhu. So from there, there was a migration of people, because there was natural calamities there, and people had migrated. So the old moorings were off, and they were forming a new kind of society here in the Ganges basins. So society was in a flux, and this is a time when there was great social unrest also. There were people who were filthy rich, and there were people who were extremely poor. It's not only in these days we find that disparity. It was there in those days also. And so these kind of people, they rallied around Buddha. And not only the poor, the rich also, the kings and nobles. In fact, one of his earliest followers were all of royal blood, all princes and all. So princes and paupers also following him in droves. He became, as it were, the focus of culture. Music and art and literature grew around him. Initially, he was not depicted as a human figure, because the Buddha is no human depiction. So it was always a lotus flower, or sandals, or just the footprints were there. Later on, with the, you can say, the Greek, you can say, Alexander's remnant armies that were there in what is called Afghanistan. It's called in the place called Gandhara, which is now Kandahar. So Indian sculpture and artisans, they were influenced by the Greek ideas, and the Greeks were. So this was the first time when the Buddha was depicted, because the Greeks like to depict things in figures, forms. So Buddha was begun to be depicted in sculpture, in forms, human forms, as you say. And you see the earliest statues of Buddha were all like, they had very Greek features, Grecian features. Then again you find he changed monasticism. Buddha was a very strict teacher. And so he made his religion essentially very ascetic and ideally suited for monasticism, not for pleasure seekers. It's a young boy pleasure seeking. No chance. You better divest yourself of all these things and then come here. As you say, we changed. There was the kind of the move to protect the environment, because he had compassion for all living beings of everything, like trees and insects and birds and animals and plants. As you said, the missionaries went around preaching Buddhist philosophy, and they changed the mental landscape and the whole landscape of the whole of Asia. With these missionaries, as you know, These traders also go along with them. They follow them. And trade flourished. There was already, you can say, the beginnings of the Silk Route, from China. That the missionaries were traveling down there on this pattern. But education, there was a mass, you can say, upsurge in studies. People used to come from all over Asia to India, and Indians also, these bhikkhus, as they call, monks. They used to go around and teach. So even if you look at Kung Fu, I think Kung Fu is nice. It was developed there, but its home was here in Kerala called Kaleri Paitu. And so all these arts and all these kind of sciences from here, they were taken away all over the place, and traders went around, they spread the music, the musicians went around, they influenced art and music and literature and everything. Universities, like one of the oldest universities in the world was where? One of the, Nalanda it ran for 800 years. And the biggest one was Takshashila. Yeah. So there were they say there were over 1,000 professors there. And it was here that Patanjali also was one of the professors, including the Sanskrit grammar was systematized by Panini. He was also one of those professors then. So it was, imagine about 1,000 professors there. We're not called professors, but we're then teachers. The students from all over the world, the known world, used to come there. Like Greeks and Chinese and Japanese and everybody, they used to come and study there. So what Swami Vivekananda says, the Buddha's ideas were so great. We are still working out his ideas. Yes. So, and it will take a long time for Buddha's ideas to be worked out. It's always like that. So one of his main doctrines was the doctrine of, as I said, constant change and impermanence. Pratitya samutpada. So he saw what he called as the dharma was the constant change of things. And they're constantly changing, they're constantly impermanent, and they are empty. He did not want to bring in another higher entity or higher agency. Everything is just emptiness. Now this school became very famous. They are called the nihilists or Shunyavadins. Everything is empty. There's no Atman, there's nothing. Yeah. But there was another school. They said, no, wait. They are called a subjective idealist. That's the Yogacharas. They say there's something called flickering consciousness. Everything is flickering, and that is projected outside. So you put both these two Buddhist schools together and they will be fighting against each other. And then the other main two schools, they are the realist. This external world does exist. So the first school says there is no world outside, there is no world inside. The second school says, wait, there is something inside and that is projected outside. Okay. And the third, third and fourth, everything. So the whole thing is like, if everything is in a flux, how do you have a memory of what happened yesterday or day before yesterday? So Vedanta says, how do you remember this thing? They never even bought a doctrine of Atman. How do you remember? Then, actually there is a kind of a residue in the flux. and it's called the Alaya Vijnana, and that's a subconsciousness. I said, what is subconsciousness? So then, like I said, it was a time when everything, the Indian philosophy also, it becomes so fine. The arguments are they not only rattle, they make you feel dizzy. If you read some of these old Buddhistic arguments and counter-arguments and Vedanta, and say, oh my God, how could these people think like that? Amazing. So, however, he gave a link of the 12 links. Suffering, yeah, it's because of you are born, that's why you are suffering. What's the cause of birth? Then your parents, no, parents also were born. So you're saying you had the desire to be born, the will to be born. And why did that will to be born come from? It has come from thirst. It's called Trishna. The Buddhistic word is Tanna. So the thirst. And why is the thirst has come from? Old experiences. What is this old experience? Where does the old experience come from? Obviously, because your mind and your senses contacted with the external world, and that is what your experience is. So, what is the cause of that? You have the mind and senses, they are the causes of the experience, of the contact. And then what is this? The mind and sense, it needs a body, nama rupa. So you have a body, the cause is there. And then what is the cause of that? There is an initial consciousness, it's called a vijnana. And where does that come from initial? Say, he never bought any kind of consciousness as separate, etc. So he said, yeah, it is the impressions, samskaras of experiences. That is the initial consciousness. And then, from where does that come from? From avidya, ignorance. So you've fallen into a loop. You're going round and round and round and yeah. So even the doctrine of karma is a kind of just an aspect of this universal laws of change and impermanence. He called this the dharma and called this the middle path. Okay. I think we could go on and on and on. So this was his light and life. And as I said, we are still working out his great ideas. Some of the ideas are remarkable. But always, they say that he was clear. Think through things. And you find them good, live up to them. Be good and do good. This is the whole thing. And then he gave this doctrine of the you can say, the eightfold method, Ashtanga. Not the yoga method, right views, right actions, right concentration, etc. And so after he passed away, his philosophy, what is called Buddhism, there was no Buddhism as a separate kind of study or it was all within the larger, you can say, parameter of Indian philosophy. Later on, they made it Buddhism and Hinduism. There was no such thing then. Okay. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. So, Maharaj, if I may ask, I have heard that you were once enthusiastic to become a Buddhist monk. How did Vedanta pull you over there? Thanks. He must have listened to some of my old talks. Thank you, Kumar. Yeah, it was true. But then, Vedanta will always win, finally. So that was that. Okay. we will take our questions after here, because the announcements are, as you've seen, you heard around that Vivekananda's, you can say, Guru of the world, America's first Guru, that is being aired on PBS. Go to their website and see, it's a 1.5 hour there. So that is Swami Vivekananda's work here in the West, especially in America, and its impact occurring. And then we have today evening Ram Nam. So singing the glories of Rama. And please go to our website and check out all the other things. We are going to have a retreat in June 8th and 9th at Tapovan. So you need to register before you can attend it. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.